This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Hosted by Katie Milkman, an award-winning behavioral scientist and author of the best-selling book, How to Change, Choiceology is a show about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Hear true stories from Nobel laureates, authors, athletes, and everyday people about why we do the things we do. Listen to Choiceology at schwab.com/podcast or wherever you listen.
Growing your e-commerce business comes with plenty of hurdles, but shipping shouldn't be one of them. Well, here's some good news. Powerful e-commerce shipping software called ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes. With ShipExcel, you can generate discounted shipping labels for both online and offline orders. That saves time and money, with everything right at your fingertips. Start your free trial of ShipExcel from Pitney Bowes today.
This makes me sound not like a great person. My husband and I have this dream of making a bingo card. Every time somebody says something sexist, and every time somebody mentions the industrial complex is burning down our food infrastructure, we're going to check a box.
If you are a terrible person, I am a terrible person because I have actually made a bingo card. It was just making me laugh so hard when you said that.
I need the template.
Hello, and welcome to How To, the show where listeners bring us their tangliest questions and we find an expert to help them sort it out. I'm Courtney Martin. Today's question is, well, pretty tangly. It involves our deepest core beliefs, the things that define us as parents and partners, and what happens when those beliefs aren't compatible with those of our extended families. Today's listener, Sarah, is a research scientist by day, but in her personal life, she's exploring big questions about in-laws, values, and the things we teach our kids.
My husband and I have a daughter, and she is, as I say, 3 going on 13, as cliche as that is. We are trying to raise her to be a really justice-oriented kid and really confident in herself and confident in her ability to navigate the world. And we have family that have viewpoints that are kind of at odds with that.
Sarah says she loves her husband's family, and they're all really close. His parents live more than 1,000 miles away, but Sarah and her family visit several times a year, sometimes for weeks at a time. But her in-laws are religiously and politically conservative in ways that are in sharp contrast to how Sarah and her husband are raising their 3-year-old daughter.
We have always been at odds, particularly around gendered stereotypes, their belief in the role that women should play in professional life, personal life, family life, pretty much any other you can imagine. It's frustrating and pushes me particularly to a point where I need to walk away, like physically distance myself from them when the things that they argue with me about specifically dovetail with elements of my expertise that I have trained for decades in. So if, for instance, if they come at me with something that they've heard about, something medical, for instance, dealing with children, like vaccination or something, and I can articulate the sort of scientific evidence and rationale for something, and that does not work. Science doesn't beat belief, as I think we're all probably aware. And a lot of times in those instances, I can get really frustrated, and so I have to lean on physical distance. And I think that they sometimes do that with us too. They can get really frustrated with us and our beliefs and just migrate away for a little bit before we come back.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we'll crack open a beer, a bottle of something, and just continue being family.
So give us a little more sketch of your in-laws, religiously, age-wise, kind of like what are the kinds of things that you're worried about your daughter internalizing that they might be saying on a regular basis?
So age-wise, mid to late 50s, previously pretty hardcore Southern Baptist, but they migrated away from the church, I believe, because the Southern Baptist Church was a little too lenient on some things in their eyes. And most of their religious feelings now are derived from their own personal interpretation of reading of religious texts, particularly the Bible. They are truly libertarian. They have despised every single one of the presidents that I've ever known them to have and the current one. They just do not want government, full stop. they have a very patriarchal viewpoint of the world, such that there's things even in our private life, my husband and my private life, that we don't do because his dad is truly the patriarch of the family and has sort of decreed that in his family, these things don't go on. And we sort of try to give a little where we can. So for instance, his father has decreed that no one in the family eats pork. So we don't eat pork. That is an easy one. We can give him that.
Even when you're not with them?
Yes, even when we're not with them. Mm-hmm.
Wow,
it's important to them. And if it's important to them, then, again, that's one that doesn't hurt anybody. Like it doesn't hurt anybody for us to not eat pork. So, okay, fine. You can have that one. So the ways that I think this is specifically impacting our child at this point are really around like how a woman is allowed to move through the world, how she's allowed to present her body in the world, how she's allowed to speak up in conversations, how they sort of drape certain elements of their day-to-day life in religious ceremony. She comes to us with a lot of questions about those things. And then also sometimes she just straight up accepts that, they've told her this thing and they are adults and they're her family and that must be true. And then she'll tell us these things and we're like, excuse me?
Yeah. Can you give us an example of one of those?
Probably the one that blindsided me the most was a conversation I had where I was getting her out of her car seat. Again, she's 3 and she was wearing a dress. And as she was jumping out of the car seat, her dress sort of flipped up a little bit and she immediately pulled it down and acted kind of weird about it. And I was like, what's wrong? Did I hurt you? Thought I maybe bumped her getting out of her car seat. She said, no, I can't let daddy see my underwear. Okay, why can't you let daddy see your underwear? Is it dirty? Do we need to change your underwear? She said, no, daddy's a boy. Boys can't see our underwear. That's bad. I was like, can you tell me where you heard this? And, she said that she'd heard this from her grandmother, and her grandmother had told her that it's bad for her to let boys see her underwear and it's bad for her to let boys see her body, and that's like a naughty thing for her to do. It just killed me. She's 3. It's just.
Yeah. And what did you say in that moment?
I didn't honestly know what to say. I reacted very emotionally. I just kind of cupped my hands around her face and I said, she's wrong. Grandmom is wrong. There's nothing wrong with you or your body. It's not shameful. You're fine. If you want to be in your underwear around daddy, you can be in your underwear around daddy. And she just, at that point, I think probably saw a butterfly. I was like, oh, a butterfly.
Yeah, right. So, what would you do in this situation? You could confront the grandparent and set strict boundaries. You could limit contact, or some parents might even end contact entirely. But Sarah has decided to do something that I think is pretty extraordinary. She's looking for a way to maintain this relationship with her in-laws while also standing firm on her values for herself and her daughter.
We still love our families very much. They love us. They love our kid. We do not want there to be a tense relationship. We don't want there to be animosity. And we want our daughter to be able to fully enjoy the relationship, particularly with her grandparents in this situation. So we're really kind of struggling with, how do we do this? How do we raise her to be the kind of person that we want her to be and still maintain a relationship with people who hold viewpoints that are completely antithetical to what we believe the world should be? How do we message that to her? How do we maintain that as she gets older as well?
On today's show, how to raise a progressive daughter who loves her conservative grandparents and maybe even help those grandparents evolve a bit in the process. And to help us, we're bringing in one of the most nuanced, research-backed voices in the parenting sphere.
My name is Melinda Wenner-Moyer, and I'm a science journalist and author. Recently, I've been writing a lot about parenting and child development. I have written 2 books. The first is How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Assholes, which came out in 2021. And then most recently in May of this year, my second book, Hello, Cruel World, Science-Based Strategies for Raising Terrific Kids in Terrifying Times.
We'll hear from Melinda right after this break.
This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Choiceology is a show all about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Each episode shares the latest research in behavioral science and dives into themes like, can we learn to make smarter decisions, and the power of do-overs. The show is hosted by Katie Milkman. She's an award-winning behavioral scientist, professor at the Wharton School, and author of the best-selling book, How to Change. In each episode, Katie talks to authors, historians, athletes, Nobel laureates, and everyday people about why we make irrational choices and how we can make better ones to avoid costly mistakes. Listen and subscribe at schwab.com/podcast or find it wherever you listen.
If you're running a business right now, you already know it's hard. Tight budgets, hiring freezes, and economic uncertainty is just the beginning. Good news, Upwork is helping small businesses do more with less. Upwork is the hiring platform designed for the modern playbook where you can find, hire, and pay expert freelancers who can deliver results from day one. It's perfect for businesses on tight budgets, fast timelines, and zero room for error. Never tried Upwork? Well, now is the perfect time because they are giving How To listeners a $200 credit after spending $1,000 in the first 30 days. That's $200 you can put toward your next freelancer, whether it's design help, AI automation, admin support, marketing, or whatever your business needs. Visit upwork.com/save right now for this great offer. That is upwork.com/save to get a $200 credit to put towards your next freelancer to help grow your business. That's upwork.com/SAVE, upwork.com/save. Don't wait, this offer is only valid June 24th through August 5th, 2025. Melinda, I'm sure you have so many thoughts. Do you want to jump in? Any reactions to what you're hearing so far?
It sounds like you are navigating this complexity beautifully because it is really hard. And I just want to acknowledge that. And these conversations, like when she got out of the car, like those moments are so hard. And I've had some of them with my kids too. I have 2 kids. I have some similar experiences with my extended family, but I also think that these kinds of situations where like discomfort arises or there's, sort of a blatant acknowledgement that like somebody has very different views, very different values, very different priorities, that those are really rich opportunities for us as parents to really like open our kids' worlds up and get them thinking about complexity and nuance, because kids think in these very like black and white ways. And I mean, a lot of adults do too. She's young, but I think she's not so young that you can't start sort of like helping to open things up and having these conversations about like, why do we care about what we care about? Why do other people have different beliefs and where do those come from? And it's also just like an opportunity to encourage curiosity, open-mindedness, like deep listening. But as hard as these situations are, I do find that they're often like these amazing opportunities for growth and learning, and also like getting closer to your child through having these like really thoughtful and deep conversations and listening to them too as they start to form their opinions.
Do you have instincts, Melinda, around how much Sarah should get ahead of certain things by having conversations with her in-laws about like sort of bright lines that she might have versus being reactive, which sounds like sort of the way she's handling it right now is when her daughter says something countering with like, here's how we think about this. Is it worth trying to get ahead of some of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it depends on her in-laws a little bit. And I mean, you can certainly try to set boundaries and say, I really would rather you not talk about gender-related beliefs in our house. You could certainly try to draw these lines. The question is, will they respect it? Will they even know when they're making comments that would make you uncomfortable? That's also tricky. Sometimes my family will sometimes say things about my daughter's appearance that, and they never comment on my son's appearance. And I'm like, just the fact that you're saying anything about how pretty she looks, like it bothers me because I'm like, appearance isn't everything. Like, and I think sometimes it's hard because they don't always know when they're crossing a line. I think it really depends on whether Sarah thinks they are aware enough to know when they're crossing lines and would actually respect those requests. And if not, I still think you can navigate this anytime they say something to her daughter, to use that as an opportunity, either in the moment to have like a response or afterwards to have a conversation with her daughter about it. And like, hey, did you hear when grandma said that to you? And I'm wondering, like, what did you think about that? I think it could help, but it kind of depends on the in-laws a little bit.
Yeah. Sarah, have you thought about trying to get ahead of it and having some sort of table setting conversation with them about what you and your husband are and are not comfortable with?
Yes. And we have laid some things down that are more accessible for them in terms of an understanding of what kind of boundaries we might have, if that makes sense. So, for instance, absolutely no jokes about like race, ethnicity. No, none of it in our daughter's presence. Hard stop. And for the most part, they've been respectful of that. I think that the issue, Melinda, you've really hit it on the head for me with the like gender ring of everything. It's how they see the world, right? It's not that they are actively thinking, I'm going to program this little girl just to care about her looks. I don't think that they approach any interaction with her or with us with ill will. I think that they just are moving through the world with how they view it. When they'll tell her that she looks so pretty or that the best thing about her is her smile, or once they commented when she was 2 that they were happy to see that she was starting to lose some of her baby fat, which murdered me so deeply that I was just dumbfounded. So, there's things that they say where I think that they mean it strictly as a compliment. I think that they mean it in a way that they would be confused if I tried to set a boundary without it being a very specific boundary about a very specific topic. So, when that happened, for instance, the baby weight thing, I was like, hey, we're not talking about her weight ever. Not now, not ever. I don't care what she looks like in terms of that. That's not open for discussion.
And how did they respond in that moment, Sarah?
They were confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was confusion. I think that they were trying to like give her some compliments about that and give us some compliments about that. And the fact that we were sort of offended about it, I think was just confusing to them. So I think so long as things have like definable edges, it would be fine to set a boundary. And I think that I could sit down and be really intentional about some of those things. And then some of these other things just feel like whack-a-mole. Yeah.
Yeah, this really resonates for me. I think it's very wise for us to not overemphasize what the pre-conversation can do, because I do think it's so deeply cultural. Melinda, you have this great background in science. Is there anything that your research offers us in terms of understanding about, the goal here is not to change the beliefs of Sarah's in-laws, but is there any scientific research about the best way to sort of coexist with people who feel differently? What kinds of ways that Sarah can be prepared to talk to them in the whack-a-mole moments that will be effective? Like, I'm thinking about, for example, shaming is obviously not something we know is effective in helping people change behavior. So, like, what is the best way for her to talk to her in-laws in these moments?
Yeah. Researchers have found that when people feel like deeply listened to, they feel safer. And when you feel safer, you become more willing to hear other perspectives. You become more open-minded. And it's sort of like the way that the researcher described it to me was kind of describing the opposite situation, which is like if somebody's breaking into your house, you kind of develop this tunnel vision of like, nothing matters but getting my family out of the house or keeping everybody safe. And that's because you feel threatened. But if you feel safe, then like your brain, that tunnel vision kind of slows down and your brain kind of opens up and it becomes like much more willing to consider other things and look at the periphery. And so the idea is that if we want to get through to other people and help them see our perspective, we have to like help them feel safe first. And the way we can do that is by helping them feel listened to. This research really suggests like if we can actually like let them say their piece, let them share their opinion, ask questions like, well, where'd you hear that? Or why do you feel this way? And that then will help them like relax enough to then listen to our perspectives. And in the process, you might like understand theirs a little more. I don't know. We can hope.
Melinda, is there a script, like a line that you could offer that would create that kind of safety? Like we could take the example of, you've lost the baby weight. Like what would a sentence sound like that helps put someone in that safe space?
So I would honestly probably not try to do this in the moment if you're feeling really emotional about it. Like if my in-laws had ever said something to my daughter about losing her baby weight, I would have been like so ragey and upset by it that I'm not sure I could actually calm down enough to have a calm conversation. But I would probably try to go back to my in-laws later and say, hey, you said this about my daughter. And I just wanted to have a conversation about it. I'm curious about your perspective there and like why you thought that might be a good thing to say. Like, did you think it would make her feel better about her body? Like, what were you thinking? And sort of try to just like get them talking, and then maintaining eye contact is important. Asking questions that aren't just to satisfy your own curiosity, but are to confirm that you understand what they're saying. So, I'm hearing you say that you did it because you thought that this would make her feel good about herself. Is that right? Like really trying to repeat back what you're hearing, confirm that you're understanding it correctly, not interrupting, that kind of thing, and just sort of staying calm. Like those are all things that can help somebody feel this like feeling of being heard, and then this feeling of safety.
Yeah, sort of the mirroring or the looping, which is not to like affirm it, but just to say, this is what I'm hearing. Is this accurate? Okay.
Exactly.
And then I was thinking when you were talking about safety, like Sarah, how safe do you feel? Because I think that's a flip side of this. And maybe this is also something that comes with the more years of parenting you have under your belt. But when I feel at odds in some ways with the culture of my in-laws' family, I also feel this like deep sense of how powerful I am as a mother, and that, I have created such a strong culture with my kids. It's kind of mama bearish, but it's also just like when you're in those moments, do you feel that in yourself, the safety of your own power as a mother who, sets the tone 90% of the time?
It's funny you mentioned the idea of me sounding like that. So I come an extremely matriarchal lineage. Like,
yeah, I sense that.
The women in my family are the women of my family. We're going to do what we're going to do, and we're going to get it done. I was raised by my mom to be 100% self-sufficient, not just for myself, but also like to protect those that I love and care about, but also those that can't protect themselves. And it sort of tweaks that nerve in me of protectiveness to hear somebody make a comment about my daughter's 3. She doesn't even have a concept of, her body versus the external space of the world. I'm sort of like watching these like cultural issues get pushed into her brain, and it triggers that in me deeply. I think what Melinda was saying, the idea of like reflecting sort of like a safe, open, listening environment, I think that that's a growth area for me to calm down before approaching them about this. And then, how can I respond with a little bit of space and grace for them, whenever I do kind of confront it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also hearing in that, Melinda, which I know is so much a part of your most recent book, is grappling with the loss of control. Like as your little one becomes bigger and bigger, you have less and less control over what they're taking in. And it's on some level quite terrifying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can create a culture in your family and, communicate your values. And then your kids are still getting all the messages from the outside world about gender, especially. Like with my 11-year-old daughter, we have so many conversations about why there are all these beauty expectations. And we talk about diet culture all the time and how nefarious it is and all the ways it appears. And then she'll still like say something like, do I look fat in this? And I'm just like, oh God, like she's still getting the messages. So sometimes I feel powerless. And then other times I'm like, she's also very quick to identify it when she sees it around her. Like if she hears a sexist comment, sees something on a TV show, she's like, Mom, I really didn't like the way he talked to her. Or Mom, that seemed like a sexist comment because why would he do that? And so she's also, those moments make me feel really good because I'm like, she is, yes, she's absorbing these messages because how can you not? It's like the air we breathe. But she also is becoming better and better at recognizing it, especially as your daughter gets older, Sarah. Like, if your in-laws say something that just really triggers you, I mean, first of all, if she's young, she may not even know what it means and what all the implications are. Obviously, over time, it will affect her. But if you can like use those as springboards for conversations later of like, Grandma said this to you and, did you think anything about it? And sort of hear what she has to say and then say, well, it kind of bothered me. And I want to talk a little bit about why and sort of get into this. Like, you're really arming her with this slowly over time with this ability to like see it and recognize it. And hopefully, you know, maybe not 100% reject it, but reject it, you know, to a certain degree.
Yeah. One of the main sticking points I have about my current situation is like, how much should I be addressing this with her? Like, is it developmentally appropriate for me to bring something like that up again to her when she's 3? Like, almost giving it this importance and blowing it out of proportion compared to, you know, what space it was actually taking up in her brain or her heart to begin with.
Yeah, there isn't like a, by age 4, you know, you can have these conversations sort of like rule, because it really does depend on the kid, the topic, all these things. But I agree that with a 3-year-old, with that situation, the thing about the baby fat, I probably would not bring that specific thing up with my daughter later, because I would assume that it probably went over her head, and you don't want to like make her feel worried or like suddenly like, should I even like grandma anymore? You know, you don't want to do that. But what I might do is get some good books that are age appropriate, that are sort of generally about the topic, and start sort of introducing her to this generally. I would also like watch, as she's getting older, like watch her reaction to some of the things her grandparents might say, like eliciting a sort of confused look or anything like that. And then you could definitely bring it up later.
It sounds like you're kind of also saying like, I can maybe trust my daughter a little bit for some of these things, like trust her reaction to guide me.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is where an old piece of advice from my pediatrician springs to mind. She once told me it's not what your kids eat in a day, but what they eat in a week. What matters is their sum total accumulation of nutrition. I think that thinking like that could apply here too. Listen, your kid is getting all sorts of nutritious touch points over the course of a year where you're modeling and talking about your radical values. That means they're going to have the overall constitution to withstand a few retrograde comments from your in-laws, right? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, tactics for talking to the in-laws. Oh, and we'll hear how Sarah's husband is handling this. It is his parents, after all. Stay with us.
Fear is everywhere. Broken systems, fractured supply chains. Are you scared yet? They want us to be. But that's not our future. We're pioneering global protection to secure what matters most. We are the Guild. Together, we won't fear tomorrow.
Not an offer to invest. Terms and conditions apply. The Guild is a fictional property of Activision. Trademark copyright 2025.
Abercrombie denim is everything right now. Denim should feel like this. Confident, easy, like your butt has never looked better. If you didn't know, Abercrombie's Curve Love denim went viral in 2019 for eliminating waist gap, and it's still a game changer. Between that and their classic fits with a straighter line from waist to hip, the perfect denim does exist. Shop Abercrombie denim in the app, online, and in store.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
We're back with Melinda Wenner Moyer, science journalist and author of the recent book, Hello, Cruel World, Science-Based Strategies for Raising Terrific Kids in Terrifying Times. She's giving guidance to Sarah, a listener who wants to raise a kid to have a strong connection to social justice and a strong connection to grandparents who have very different values. Up until this point, we've been talking about having calm, open-minded conversations. And the thing is, it's easy to talk about the conversations. It's much harder to actually have them.
Part of what I feel a little shackled about, where I can't just head on address it the way that my mama bear instinct would maybe lead me to, is that I do love my in-laws and they adore my kid and she adores them and they are smart people and they are kind and they love their family. I can't trash her relationship with them or trash them to her. Like everything needs to sort of be this like balance. And at the end of the day, if it is, defend my in-laws or defend my daughter, 1,000 times it'll always be defend my daughter. No questions. I will. If I have to tear that relationship down over something, then it has to be done. But I want to avoid that at all costs because there's so much love and so much kindness here. And like, whenever I have these conversations with her or sort of offline or away from them, it's always sort of in the back of my mind is like, how do I talk to her about this without making her sort of question like, well, more so as she gets older, like, oh, are my in-laws just like out of touch? Are they not smart enough? Like, I don't want her feeling like I have any of those feelings or that she should have any of those feelings that her in-laws are somehow not, quote, enough.
Yeah, I think you're making a really good point. And it's so good for kids to be exposed to diversity of all kinds. We think about the importance of exposing kids to, racial, ethnic diversity, like all, socioeconomic diversity. But like, this is true also of like diversity of values and diversity of beliefs because the world is complex and people are complex. Like the more our kids can see that from a young age, it's actually really, really helpful for them. And because also it does offer these opportunities for really nuanced conversations. And then I think it's really good for kids to recognize from a young age that like you can disagree with people and have different values and different priorities and still love them. And that's such an important message. And I think there are a lot of kids who don't grow up thinking that because I will give you an example with my daughter. I mean, we do kind of live in an area where there is a bit of sometimes a bubble. There is some diversity, but one of my daughter's friends, she found out that she was a Trump supporter. And my daughter came home and was like, well, I guess I can't be friends with her anymore. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, let's talk about this. Why do you think you can't be friends with her? And she said, well, because Trump supporters are bad people. And I was like, oh boy, like there's a lot of like assumptions there, let's push in some nuance here and like talk about why sometimes might people support Trump? Like, what does like life circumstances, life experience have to do with it? Could she just be a Trump supporter because her parents are, but not really understand what it means? Like we just had this conversation and tried to kind of open that up. And then eventually she's like, okay, well, maybe I can still be friends with her. And so I do feel like, having this built into your family where your daughter is seeing that like she's going to see over time anyway, that like you can have these different beliefs and still care for somebody and still love them and, still respect them, maybe not in every way, but in a lot of ways. And I think that's really, really valuable too.
We're sort of wrapping up soon, but I feel like we haven't hit on something which is really important, which is your relationship with your husband around all of this and like your role versus his role. How do you think about all of that? And is there confusion there that we can help with?
My husband is like the diamond among men. I don't even know what to say. I cannot be effused enough with my praise with him. That man calls his parents every week and sits on the phone for hours with them, discussing anything they want to talk about. Anything. And he's open and he's honest and he's charitable with them. And sometimes he leaves the phone calls really happy that he was talking with them. And sometimes he's really frustrated, but he does it regardless. He spent several years of his life sort of deprogramming himself. He was raised very, Southern Baptist, very politically conservative. He was raised by his parents, right? All these same beliefs. And he really just worked very hard to overcome all of those things. And he is one of the most intellectually curious people I've ever met in my life. He will go toe to toe with his parents in ways that are much more palatable for them than I can do. So for instance, I might say, well, XYZ, and then their retort is, a direct quote from the Bible. I'm out of my depth now. I'm not quoting the Bible. That's just not my area. And he can come right back with, well, in this verse, that, this, the other. He's got that thing memorized inside and out and can just immediately engage with them on their level. Sometimes he plays mediator. Sometimes he plays Papa Bear, but he's always in everyone's corner. I don't even know how he does it. He's always in my corner. He's always in our daughter's corner. He's always in his parents' corner. I have no idea how he does it.
Oh my God. What a beautiful human. Can we have him on the pod? I'm like,
can we clone him, please?
Well, he's, he is an engineer. And so he doesn't speak much unless he has to. So I don't know if this is his depth, but
Wow. I am
yeah.
this is so refreshing to hear. This is not what most of my hikes with my friends sound like. Let's just say that. So, Sarah, it sounds like he might be, in some ways, the best possible source of expertise on how to do this because he deprogrammed himself. So, like, he probably knows from lived experience, like, things to say to your daughter and or ways to model for her what that looks like, right?
Yes, but as he would say, he's always a work in progress, right? So a lot of his, extremely sort of fundamentalist Christian beliefs have given him pauses when it comes to thinking that he should step in and know anything about how women talk about other women's bodies or how a woman should think about her own body. There's definitely a huge portion of this that I lean extremely heavily on him for. But then there's other parts that I think he is also trying to lean on me for, supporting me as well. But it's going to be a team effort for sure. It's also just he's the primary worker, he's bringing in the most money. He's very committed to his job and works really, really hard. And so a lot of times the situation we'll end up in is like, maybe his parents come up for a visit to us, and then I'll drive down with his mom back to their place with my daughter. I'll stay with them for a couple weeks, just me and her. So there's a lot of like these sort of minute conversations that are happening with the three of us, these interactions that he's not a part of. And it would be sort of awkward to be like, well, I'm going to go talk to your son. Like, I wouldn't say it like that, but to sort of rope him in would be an effortful pool that would make, I think, the situation even bigger than it needed to be. But in the grand scheme of things, yes, I think that he is just an endless fountain of knowledge there with how to interface here.
Your daughter's going to learn so much from watching him interact with your in-laws. And I think that's going to be wonderful. I mean, so much of parenting too is just like modeling, what you want your kids to be. And it sounds like he's really thoughtful and generous and open-minded. And she's, you don't have to teach her all that. Like she is going to learn a lot of it by watching both of you.
I'm also like sitting here feeling so delighted at the ways your daughter is going to influence your in-laws as the years go on. And I'm thinking of like, I had one friend whose in-laws were very conservative, and her daughter came home and said, it was so weird. Grandma was talking about like cleaning my hoo-ha. And I had to explain to her, it's called a vulva, Grandma. Like, what is this strange word you're using? And it's just so cool that like kids can disarm grandparents in this great way where it's like they're not having a intellectual argument. They're just like, oh no, the scientific name is vulva, Grandma,
Yes. Yeah. My daughter, I like to say, but it really is true. She really came out of the womb fully formed. She had her personality locked down. No one was going to change it. She is her own person. She has her own likes. She has her own dislikes. She is what she is.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. It's such a cool, it makes our jobs very different because I always say like she came out as like this goddess and I was like, I guess I better get out of her way.
Yes.
Just like figure out how to follow her lead because she knows how she feels, which is a great asset in this situation too, right? Because you really know that as she keeps growing up, she's going to be very clear with her grandparents.
Yeah, I do. And I do feel like that I will eventually be able to trust her to do that. I just want to keep the guardrails on a little bit longer past, just this like extremely critical developmental zone. In terms of this transition out of the really early childhood into sort of preteen, teen eras, like, am I stressed about this overly? Like, is this something that I should not be this worried about? Or is this an appropriate amount of stress about this scenario? Like, am I going to look back and be like, what was I so worried about? Or is this as important as it feels to me, I guess? Is there a temperature check there?
Melinda, What do you think?
I have long been worried about all the cultural messages that my kids are getting from the world, like not as much specifically from extended family, but just like from friends, from YouTube, from like everything that is maybe giving them messages that contradict my values. So I think it is very normal and healthy. And I also think that because you care so much about it, your daughter's going to be okay. Like you're going to have so many conversations you're going to be modeling the values that you care about and challenging these messages at home so much, it is going to make a difference. Even if you don't get every conversation right, even if you miss tons of opportunities to have the conversations because for whatever reason you can't do it, it's on your mind. So it's going to happen enough to make a difference. And that's what I think.
Yeah, I really have the same instinct. I think that because of your love for everybody involved, which you just articulated so beautifully, because of your husband and his strengths and incredible, independent thinking, because of your daughter coming out the way she came out, which is such a sacred, beautiful thing, because of you being raised in this matriarchal culture, everything's going to be fine. When you're talking, I hear the intensity in your voice. You've used some pretty intense adjectives, and I do think you could turn the volume down on that and kind of reassure your nervous system, oh, there's so many assets here that we're all going to get through this together. And I can kind of rest in that trust a little more, which is not to say it's not worth being intentional about and being really clear that you do have bright lines. But I'm just hearing so much strength amidst all of these human beings. And again, especially this little one that you've described, that I just feel like you can reassure your nervous system that it's going to be great.
So essentially being aware of, but I should just chill out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's a cliff notes to every book you write, right, Melinda?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, it's very true. And I also joke that I'm kind of preaching to the choir. It's the people who are going to pick up my books and read them already care about these issues and are their kids are probably going to be fine. It's the kids who have parents who don't know that there are these issues, who don't care. Those are the kids I'm worried about. But I mean, you're already highly aware and very thoughtful on all of these issues. So she is going to be fine. I deeply believe that.
Thank you guys both so much. Again, really appreciate it.
Thanks to Sarah for coming to us with this great question, and to Melinda for all of her useful advice. Make sure to pick up her newest book, Hello, Cruel World, and check out her Substack called Now What? This conversation continues in today's Quick Fix, our exclusive bonus episode for Slate Plus members. Melinda and I will talk about the 3 core tenets of raising resilient kids. It's super clarifying. If you aren't already a Slate Plus member, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the How To show page. Or visit slate.com/how-to+ to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available for you to listen to right now. Do you have an existential bingo card that needs solving? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. If you like what you heard today, please give us a rating and a review and tell a friend. That helps us help more people. How To is produced by Rosie Belson with Kevin Bendis and Sophie Semmergrad. Joel Meyer is our supervising producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Carvel Wallace is my co-host. I'm Courtney Martin. Thanks for listening.